Hey everybody, I don't know about you, but as you've watched out over the world, the war in Russia and Ukraine is not just isolated to Eastern Europe. It's spread all over the world, and you can see it in market instabilities. You can see it here. People who do not think that that war is affecting you, all you got to do is look at gas prices. You look at your food prices. You see the global change that has happened. But you know something that's also affected investments as well. And I've said all along, legacy precious metals is your navigator. They're the ones that see you through to get to the next level. The good news about this is, even with market volatility, market instability, you've got options. And gold prices are rising as investors turn to gold. And gold presents a hedge against this inflation and that protects you against the weakening dollar, which we are seeing. Legacy Precious Metals is the only company I trust to deal with gold and silver and the other precious metals. You need this investment. You need this as part of your portfolio to keep you buffered from what we're seeing in the world, war and volatility in the market. This is where you need to be. Call Legacy Precious Metals today. Be proactive about this. Get on board with it. Call them at 866-528-1903, 866-528-1903, or you can download their free investor's guide at legacypminvestments.com. legacypminvestments.com, your navigator in a volatile world of investments.
Do you want to listen to a podcast?
By who?
Georgia GOP Congressman Doug Collins.
How is it?
The greatest thing I have ever heard in my whole life.
I could not believe my ears.
In this house, wherever the rules are disregarded, chaos and mob rule. It has been said today, where is bravery? I'll tell you where bravery is found and courage is found. It's found in this minority who has lived through the last year of nothing but rules being broken, people being put down, questions not being answered, and this majority say, be damned with anything else. We're going to impeach and do whatever we want to do. Why? Because we won an election. I guarantee you, one day you'll be back in the minority and it ain't gonna be that fun.
Hey everybody, it's Doug Collins. Welcome back to the Doug Collins Podcast. Glad to have you as a part. This always is a great time to get together when we can share our podcast time together. But I want to remind you, there's a lot of folks ask, well, how can I stay in touch with the Doug Collins Show? You know, even if I've listed all my podcasts, I've shared them. The DougCollinsPodcast.com. I encourage you to go to the DougCollinsPodcast.com. There's going to be a lot of links there to some of our sponsors like Legacy Precious Metals, My Pillow. There's a lot of folks there that you can, connect with. But there's also, our blog page. There's also a place where you can email me if you have ideas for shows, if you have questions about something that we've already done. This is where you can keep in touch with me as we go forward. Also, there's still for the next few days, there's still going to be an opportunity for you to enter and win, an opportunity to come to see me in Georgia and be a part of our podcast. And I want you to take advantage of that. Go out and go to the website, the DougCollinsPodcast.com, and you will be able to sign up for those events and also keep in touch with us and grow as family as we continue on. Because over the next little bit, we're going to have other trips. There are going to be other plans that we're going to be wanting to get you involved in, ready to have you be a part of the Doug Collins Podcast family. So thanks for being a part today. I want to take in, and we're going to dive right into some things today that really have been festering up. This is a bothersome topic. I want to go back historically wise here for just a minute. Let's catch up. The Joe Biden administration has a lot of problems. There's a lot of issues that that just keep compounding, and it started basically from day one when they decided to make their attack on the energy independence of our country. They shut down the Keystone Pipeline. They made the New Green Deal the background feature in everything that they do, so that they made it. Oil and gas leases are harder to use. Even if they have them, they're almost unmanageable. There's no working with our energy producers, so they feel under attack. So again, they're not going to make major investments into things if they don't think that the government, or if they feel the government is going to be, taking those away or legislating them out of existence in some ways over the next 10 to 15 years. This is a long-term game that the Democrats seem to be playing, but I'm not sure they understand what they're playing with, because you also then turn around and they want to put a mandate on energy cars and electric cars and energy efficiency. And these all are going to take power off of our electrical grid, which right now, in very honest format, is not capable of handling that kind of pull on our grid. So we've got a problem with this administration not understanding the basics. Then you go into the fact of inflation, and the fact that they sort of lit the fuse on inflation last year with the American Rescue Plan, even when they were told by others that this is not a good idea to continue to dump this much money into the economy at a time in which you had supply chain issues, you had supply not being able to be delivered to stores, you had things being waited on, and you had a higher demand because people had excess income. So instead of trying to put off the car purchase or to put off the remodeling purchase, they were out there trying to buy these things when, again, supply was low. What's going to happen? Demand's high, supply is low, prices go up. This is what they were warned about. However, as we continue on into this process, I believe that one of the biggest issues that the Biden administration is having to deal with, and we've mentioned this before, we've talked about it a little bit, but I want to now sort of do a revisit and say a year ago, we were in the process of watching Afghanistan fall. This was July, August timeframe last year. The Biden administration had made their faithful decision to say we're going to have all of our troops out by September 11th, 2021. They wanted to have the symbolic political victory of being able to remove troops, 20 years after the terrorist attacks on 9/11 in New York and Washington. This was their political, see, I did something that Donald Trump didn't do. I got us finally out of Afghanistan. I've done what I promised to do. The problem is they made no real conditions on how they were going to get us out of Afghanistan, thus leaving a vacuum in which it was seen by many in the Defense Department. There's many personnel on the ground saying, look, if you remove these troops the way you're removing them with no conditions, and then you're removing yourself out of Bagram Air Base, you're moving back to Kabul. The issue was that the Taliban was going to take over, and they took over at a very rapid pace, and this was predicted by many in the time that this was going on. So in understanding that issue, I've said and made the case many times that the very problem with the Biden administration and their underlying problems with how they see their support and why they see their support in the low 30s and why they see the disapproval rate over 60. You can take in inflation. You can take in the mess economically we have with gas prices, food prices, the baby formula shortage, whatever you want to throw on top of this. And you can understand why Americans are very frustrated, both Democrats and Republicans, with the administration. And we also see it with Democrats, the administration not fighting for the liberal causes that liberals think that they ought to be fighting for. They didn't think that they fought hard enough now or fighting hard enough for abortion rights. The pro-abortion folks feel like the administration has not done enough. You see that in gun control. You see it just sort of down the line. They feel the Biden administration is not fulfilling the promises that it made on the campaign trail to the left. But when it comes to the general public as a whole, the one area that I think everybody goes back to, and there's just general disagreement and discomfort among many Americans, whether they're associating with themselves with a party or not, was when we saw what they believed, and I think the world saw, was a cut and run by the Biden administration out of Afghanistan. And ignoring the discussions, ignoring the problems, ignoring the possibilities that existed in Afghanistan by keeping even a smaller number of troops there who are not engaged in combat and hadn't been engaged in combat for several months and years there, and which we had not experienced a fatality in over 18 months. And then last summer, we lost 13 lives at the airport in Kabul. It looked to the rest of the world, and it looked to many Americans as if America had just give up. That instead of it being the orderly transition out of Afghanistan that many people had wanted, even if it meant a smaller presence or keeping Afghanistan at least at a minimal level of gains that had been made since the Taliban last ruled in 2001, that would be the discussion that most people would want to have. They didn't want to just see the Afghanistan turn back over and everything that we had attempted to gain in 20 years, however little it may seem in the world spectrum, would have not been completely lost. The problem was the way we did it, how we did it, and the Biden administration concern on political posturing and political maneuvering left Afghanistan with a hole. It left us in two real areas of concern. Number one, it left us with people that we had promised that we would take care of. We left them there. Many of them are now dead. Many of them were dead right after the Taliban took control of the country before we could even get everything out. Remember, we had sent a lot of equipment to the Afghan National Army, which, again, we didn't destroy. Even though we saw the Taliban coming, it was not destroyed. It was left. The Taliban now own that equipment because they took it over when the Afghan National Army just basically fell apart or they were defeated. Not only that, we left people there that we had promised that we would take care of. People who were interpreters, they were others who had worked in our embassy, worked alongside our bases in Afghanistan, was there to help. And the Taliban knew who these people were. They could go through the records, they could see who these folks were, and they began not only targeting them, but they've been killing them quickly because they wanted all opposition down, and they wanted to show the rest of the country that they were going to be back in control, and they were going to do it the way that they want to do it. They took out teachers, they took out journalists. It was just, we saw it coming. The Biden administration saw it coming, and because they had committed to getting out and didn't know any other way, we left in the ragtag way that we did out of Afghanistan, which again, on a world stage, political stage, means one thing. But to the people of Afghanistan, this is the part that I think for many of us was very much the concern. If you have a country such as the United States who actually leaves its promises on the battlefield, when we actually walk away and say, after we have told these people for years, we will take care of you, we will get you out if need be, you helped us, we're going to help you. This is a problem that is just too much for many Americans to bear, in the sense that we left people there that were frankly dependent upon us. It began to look and it mirrored so much the Saigon fall in Vietnam, in which, again, people were left behind. Most of these people, if they worked with us and they could not get on these planes out of Afghanistan, have lost their lives, or they're in hiding, or they're in constant fear of being discovered. At that point in time, there was also the discussion, and I remember Joe Biden and the administration saying, we're going to hold the Taliban responsible. We're going to make sure that diplomatic pressure is applied so that they don't go back to their atrocities of old. They don't go back to doing, what they had said that they were, wanting to do. And this is really just the problematic feature of what happened in Afghanistan, is that our promises were just not kept. And it then led to the fall over. And especially when you're saying that you're going to use world diplomatic pressure on a group of people who could care less about world diplomatic pressure, you're going to see now problems coming. I want to attack this in two ways, because recently it just came to light that the U.S. and Taliban are negotiating the release of $3.5 billion in Afghan reserves, stands reserves that were frozen when the Taliban took back control of the country. Sources have reported that the exchange of proposals on how the release could be done, but there were still some issues standing in the way. In other words, the Taliban is wanting money, $3.5 billion, that was frozen as part of the $9.5 billion in reserve, some of which was held in the United States and New York City, was taken over after the Taliban took over. Now, the Taliban need this money because the country is in shambles. The country is in economic peril. They need humanitarian aid. Their people are starving. This is going to be a problem that is going to be continue to develop, but it also, frankly, tightens the Taliban's control on the government as a whole, because it'll be the Taliban that determines who gets fed. The Taliban determines who gets assistance, who gets help, who gets medical attention. It's all within the Taliban's control. But if they have no money, their assets are tied up, and they frankly have no economy to speak of, except a domestic economy. There's no way for them to find the material that they need, find the money that they need to get back in. So when you're looking at this now, Joe Biden signed an executive order in February saying that $3.5 billion of that money could be sent to Afghanistan in humanitarian aid. The problem is they wanted to set up a condition in which there would be a third-party trust that would develop the plans for how this administration would get these funds to Afghanistan, how they would be spent. And this is the Taliban, of course, is saying, look, we don't want a third party. We don't mind the trust necessarily, but we don't want a third party country having to oversee what we are doing. They're in control in Afghanistan, and unless we want to militarily remove them, which there's absolutely no appetite for here in the United States, then you're dealing with a country, whether we want to or not, that we in many ways helped retain or get back into power, is now saying, look, this is money that we feel is rightfully ours. You should give it to us. And unless the United States is willing to just say, no, we're going to keep it, and then risk even further the humanitarian crisis that will develop in Afghanistan, that will spread out possibly outside the borders of Afghanistan, then there's been this discussion on how do we give this money back, but it be spent on the people and not put into the pockets of the warlords and the government and the people who are not going to help be with anybody, help any of the assistance that needs to be done. All of this has now brought up the painful reality of what is actually going on the ground in Afghanistan. And this is one of the things that come up that I wanted to share with, that while we're negotiating monies that we held from a Taliban government that is beginning to do exactly what we and many other people said the Taliban would do. They're imposing more and more movement restrictions. They're imposing more and more restrictions and policies. They're threatening and harassing women. They're arbitrarily detaining and torturing them. Amnesty International just recently put out a report that in Afghanistan, and the report was titled "Women and Girls Under Taliban Rule: Death in Slow Motion" is what it's basically called. And since we pulled out last year, the Taliban, of course, known for their regressive ideology that young girls are not supposed to be taught past, a certain age 8, I believe it is, that they're not supposed to be taught to read, to write, to know these. And if not, you can be held and killed for teaching them under their version of Islamic law. When they first came back, the Taliban said, look, we're not going to do that. They assured the world that women's right would be honored within the norms of Islamic law. That's the key phrase. They said within the norms of Islamic law. And their interpretation of Islamic law is not anywhere close to what most of the rest of the world views as women's rights and women's issues. They started off by saying they were going to allow women to work, pursue education. But as this has continued and as the time has went on, these have been denied. And it was basically decided that we're going back to the way the Taliban used to act in Afghanistan, which led to safe havens for terrorism, such as bin Laden and others, which led to the 9/11 attack. Basically, this is a 20-year redo. You go back in time, that what the Biden administration and what they allowed to happen is we went from 2000, basically, if you want to say June or August of 2001 has been revisited last August of 2021. And now we're, 21 years in, Taliban is back fully in control and back doing what they want to do. And one of those is taking over and destroying the lives of the women in Afghanistan. Less than 1 year after that, they're depriving millions of women and girls their right to lead safe and fulfilling lives. The report goes on to say, they are being controlled, restricted, they're being watched. And even if they're in education, especially if they're younger, they're still being watched. The crackdown against the female population increases day by day. They were met with protest, of course, but the Taliban guards would intimidate, scare these women from protesting, and they would do so by bringing pictures of their own family. They would take them and say, "Look, we know who your family is. We will kill them, and you won't be able to do anything. Don't cry. Don't make a scene." And just basically saying, the protesting is going to stop, and they're putting everything that they can. That this is what real life is becoming under the Taliban rule again. We're seeing the return of the burqas. We're seeing return of the full body, the movements restriction with women not being able to leave their house without a male family member accompanying them, not being able to do the things that they normally would do. They're being beaten. They're being verbally abused. This is all what was actually said. The protesters who actually protested against some of this were detained. They had inadequate access to food, water, ventilation, sanitation products, healthcare. And to secure their release, women were forced to sign agreements that they and their family members would never protest again or speak publicly about their experiences in the detention. One university student who was detained in 2022 told Amnesty International she was threatened and beaten after being arrested on charges to the Mohammed's restrictions. She said the Taliban members started giving me electric shocks on my shoulder, face, neck, everywhere they could. They were calling me a prostitute and other things. The one holding the gun said, "I will kill you and nobody will ever be able to find your body." This is freedom, supposedly, under the Taliban rule. One of the things, though, that is very disturbing about this, and there's so many things that could be going on. We're having people who disappear. There's, the community is just beyond third world. The Taliban, even with stuff that was given, the corruption, the problems in the government, and their view of Islamic law, which is what they said up front, is becoming more and more of the strict Islamic conditions that we saw before 9/11 and coming into our time. One of the areas, though, that was very disturbing and is making a comeback in Afghanistan is the issue of the economic and humanitarian crisis is causing the Taliban and causing members of smaller communities and other communities to sell off their daughters for arranged marriages. Now, I know that in America and across the world, that sounds like something that's just unbelievably horrific, that you would never see this happen. The report from Amnesty International included a 35-year-old from a central province of Afghanistan told Amnesty International that the financial issues forced her to marry off her 13-year-old daughter, neighbor in September of last year in exchange for the bride family getting resources. The woman further said that she was also considering off. Now, this is where it really gets sad. Marrying off her 10-year-old daughter, but was reluctant to do so as she hoped her daughter might provide for the family in the future. She explained, I wanted her to study, do English, learn those kind of things, support the family. Of course, if they don't open the schools, I will have to marry her off. This is, it's just right now, it's just, is Amnesty goes on to say, this just just a devastating effect on what's going on in the country, in which it is, had years of these kind of problems over and over and over again. And when you see the attacks on the women, when you see them going backwards in time, when you see this Islamic State control that is absolutely doing away with human rights, doing away with any symbolic nature, or even remotely thought of a country that is in the 21st century, this is what happened when we left Afghanistan. Now, you don't see this on the papers anymore. This has left the headlines. It's left the front pages after a month or so went ahead, and an occasional congressional testimony. You don't ever hear this anymore. Now, one of the reasons that I'm hopeful that if the Republicans take back the House as a minimum in November, that we're going to actually have real hearings into what actually happened in Afghanistan, who gave what order, and why the orders were given. Because it was warned many, many times over that if we continue this process, the Taliban will come back and the Taliban will insert their version of Islamic law, and the women and children and the people of Afghanistan will be the ones that suffer. Believe me, it is not the Taliban and their reckless thug leaders who are suffering in this. It is the country as a whole. This is a country, to put it in perspective, that for over 20 years, the blood and tears and sweat and lives of America's sons and daughters went and fought in a country. Now, we can discuss the should we have been there, should we not been there, should we have stayed 20 years, not stayed 20 years. But at the end of the day, you cannot ever take away the sacrifices that were made by our men and women in uniform to free as best possible the Afghanistan, to reinstate a government, and then to watch it disappear in a matter of weeks, not years, not months, but a matter of weeks, because Joe Biden and his administration decided to take a very political approach and say, we're going to get all of the military assets out by September 11th, 2021, setting a time frame on it 6 or 7 months in advance. And then watching the Taliban begin to roll through the country slowly at first, and then picking up steam. The more that we pull back, the more they put on the gas, and taking over from, frankly, an Afghanistan army that was not equipped. They were not going to stand and fight. They were not going to go up against the Taliban. There was too much fear, too much history there for forever to see that happen. And to see that come down on the world stage, I believe if you look back, not only will it be the political downfall of Joe Biden, it is the polling downfall of Joe Biden. It is the esteem in the world eyes of leaders and esteem of the American public in Joe Biden that has been suffered. But it is also the people of Afghanistan and these young girls who are being sold off to much older men for money because their families simply can't afford them, and the economic and humanitarian crisis is going on in Afghanistan. I'm not going to spend a lot of time on this today. I wanted you to hear what was going on. I wanted you to hear this Amnesty International report because we're hearing reports from other reporters as well of the very same things, where the intimidation factors, the fear that is running through the country because of the Taliban tightening its control. And believe me, the further it gets away from last August, the worse it will be. The more eyes are taken off Afghanistan, the more it will become a cultural blind spot in the United States and around the world. And the Taliban will use that to their control. And then they will begin the process of even more restrictions and even more brutality on their own country. This is what happens when political decisions are not stood up to, and when we have a decision that doesn't seem to be very well thought out, even in the light of the events that were happening in the day, has led to total chaos in a country that has been basically in chaos for years. I don't believe it should have happened this way. I think it could have been done better. But if the Biden administration is so worried right now about economic conditions and economic times, then they ought to actually take a responsibility, look back at Afghanistan, and begin to realize that the actions that you have consequences. The actions you take have consequences, not only for your political presidency, but also for the right now, as we look at it, the men and women of Afghanistan, and especially the young girls who really in this place are growing up with no hope. I hope this gets you thinking. I hope it gets you motivated. I hope it makes you start go and look, because we live in a very culturally diverse world. We live in a very dangerous world, and we cannot, as Americans, ever look at our role in keeping some semblance of the hope and the peace to the rest of the world if we won't even keep our word to those who helped us when we were in battle in their countries. This is Doug Collins. I'm glad you joined me today. I hope this is stark enough to make you think. I hope it's stark enough to make you want to take action. And also, I hope it is something that we can remember in the future, that we never let those who depended on us down again, that we will keep our international promises, especially for those who helped us in time of war. We'll see you next time on the Doug Collins Podcast. Hey everybody, MyPillow. I just wanted to let you know MyPillow is having the biggest sheet sale of the year. You'll have to help. You have all helped build MyPillow into an amazing company that it is today. And now Mike Lindell, the inventor and CEO, wants to give back exclusively to his listeners. The Percal bed sheet set is available in a variety of colors and sizes, and they're all on sale. For example, the queen size is regularly priced at $89.98, but it is now only $39.98 with our listener promo code. Order now, because when they're gone, they're gone. You're not going to be able to get it. These Percal sheets are breathable. They have cool, crisp feel. They come with a 10-year warranty, 60-day money-back guarantee. Don't miss out on this incredible offer. There's a limited supply, so be sure to order now. Call 1-800-986-3994. Use the promo code Collins, COLLINS, or you can go to mypillow.com, click on the radio listener square, and use the promo code Collins, COLLINS. Lisa and I sleep on these sheets every night. You will want to have them as well. They're a wonderful product. Go right now, either 800-986-3994, code word Collins, or go to mypillow.com. Also use the code word Collins to get this discount. You will not regret it.